Welcome to the motherfucking We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest from former WBA bantamweight champion Shannon Courtenay, who's been missing in action for well over a year now. She posted this to her Instagram account, and it reads, "Over the moon to have the best in the business, Spencer Brown, Mr. Gold Star, managing my career, getting me back to the top and world champion again, just like he did with Tyson Fury. It's been a rough couple of years for me in boxing, but now I've got the best team and right people looking after me. It's about to get very exciting. Stay tuned. Fight news imminent." Shannon Courtenay last saw action way back there in December of 2022, and she hasn't seen action since then. She sat out all of last year, and rumor has it that she's out of contract with Eddie Hearn, with Matchroom, that when she returns, it may not be under that banner.
Wouldn't surprise me.
If she is now being managed by the same guy that has managed Tyson Fury, it's conceivable that when she returns, maybe it's not under the Matchroom banner, maybe it's under the Queensbury Promotions banner, or maybe under the Boxer banner. You know old Ben, he's got an affinity for poaching Matchroom fighters, or what were Matchroom fighters. Maybe Shannon comes back under that banner.
Wouldn't surprise me.
It's been a long time since Shannon Courtenay saw action. It's been an even longer time since she made bantamweight, since she made 118 pounds.
The last time Shannon had a fight of any kind, was in December of 2022.
But the last time she actually made the bantamweight limit, bantamweight, that's 118 pounds. The last time she made that weight was well over 2 years ago in 2021 for what was the Ebony Bridges fight. That's the last time Shannon made 118 successfully.
You will remember that afterwards, she blew the weight, lost her title on the scales, and she has not successfully made 118 pounds since.
I don't expect her to now. What was Matchroom's 118-pound stable, Shannon Courtenay, Nina Hughes, Ebony Bridges, seems to have all but dissolved, vanished into thin air. I don't think Shannon is still with them. We know that Nina Hughes jumped ship. She left Matchroom for DeBella Entertainment, and Ebony Bridges, she appears to be at odds with Matchroom, appears to be at odds with Eddie Hearn,
over which she wants to be paid.
So what I see is a situation where perhaps Matchroom is no longer invested in the women's bantamweight division, and they have since reshifted their focus over to the super bantamweight division, where they have Ellie Scottney and Ramla Ali, Erica Cruz.
Couple of fighters up there.
So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Shannon fighting under another banner, say the Queensbury Promotions banner, or the Boxer banner, or maybe on small hall shows until she can position herself to fight for a full title at 122 or 126, because I think she's done at 118.
Matchroom might be as well.
Though they shouldn't be. There are one or two fighters I can think of that I would like for Matchroom to pick up that are better and younger fighters. It's a younger stable than their previous stable of bantamweights. You're talking about Johanna Wanyu. You're talking about Bree Howling.
What?
Shannon Courtenay was with Matchroom for a number of years. I don't think she's with them anymore, but that's not the point. For signing a fighter like Shannon Courtenay, and they did.
She was with them for a while.
I don't see why they can't sign a younger fighter and a better boxer in Johanna Wanyu. Many more good years to give to the sport than, say, a Nina Hughes, an Ebony Bridges, or a Shannon Courtenay. She's a much younger fighter than all of them, with a higher ceiling.
Based out of the UK.
Fighting out of Churchill's boxing gym. She had a fight a few weeks ago. She won it.
She'd be a good signing.
Canadia's own Bree Howling, unbeaten up-and-comer at this same weight. She can campaign anywhere in between 118, 122, as high as 126. And this kid's a natural. I say it all the time.
Yeah, but what's Matchroom gonna do with a fighter from Canada?
The same thing they did with a fighter from Australia in Ebony Bridges. The same thing they're currently doing with a fighter from Brazil in Beatriz Ferreira.
Promote her.
Promote their fights. Build them up. And see where it goes. These two fighters, these two in particular, Bree Howling, Johanna Wanyu, they're a lot younger than Matchroom's previous stable of bantamweights with a lot more talent. I don't want it to sound like I'm slighting Nina Hughes or Ebony Bridges or Shannon Courtenay. There's no easy way for me to say that, but that's the situation.
So for the time and the effort that Matchroom put into those fighters, they could get a lot more out of it in signing Bree Howling or Johanna Wanyu.
I always felt like Shannon Courtenay and Ebony Bridges, that was Matchroom experimenting to see what they could do. Now that they have a better understanding of what it's like to promote a woman boxer, what is needed? Wanyu and Howling would be terrific additions to the Matchroom stable of Valkyries.
To further build upon what Matchroom has done for women in sport and women in boxing, changing the game and normalizing the conversation, I happen to think Eddie Hearn takes a lot of pride in what he does.
But he has helped to build alongside his star fighter, Katie Taylor. I think he would take a lot of pride in being able to do that for somebody else, for maybe one or some of the next generation of female fighters. So, let's see what happens.
How in the hell did we actually have a Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence rematch when he didn't even have a trainer? I'm sitting here going, we wasted 7 goddamn months sitting around waiting for a rematch that not only was supposed to happen by December 2023, not only did Espinosa know Showtime was going out of business back in July, but we also knew at some point that Errol Spence didn't have a goddamn trainer. The PBC, the P. Diddy Boxing Committee wasted another 7 months out of Bud Crawford's career, only for Errol Spence to pull a toto tendon in January. I don't know if he had surgery on his eye, but he jumped in the ring with Fundoka. Like, you know what? I'm next. You don't even have a trainer, Errol Spence.
Spirited caller is none other than Jerry Soriano, who is raising some very valid points when you think about it. The situation that we are now hearing about between Errol Spence Jr. and Derek James and the money that Derek feels he is owed, that started right after the Crawford fight. At least that's what the reports say.
Right?
So if you've been on the outs with your longtime trainer since the Crawford fight,
Why did you activate the rematch clause?
the rematch clause that indicated the rematch had to take place before the end of last year, otherwise the clause was null and void. The rematch that didn't take place before the end of last year because Errol, at the last minute, decided to get eye surgery for what he said were cataracts.
So wait a minute, you're on the outs with your trainer and you're having surgery to your eye. Why did you activate it then? What were you doing? It seems like you just did it to jam Terrence Crawford up.
To spite him.
Likely at the request of Al Haymon. Al Haymon, who is reported to be the one who told Errol Spence Jr. not to pay Derek James all of his money.
It's a part of that story, and a part of this one involving Terrence Crawford. Did you notice that Jermel Charlo tried to jam him up at the last minute?
Yeah.
Trying to cut ahead of the line?
Yeah.
Via the WBA, requesting that he be reinstated as WBA Super Champion?
What about it?
Just seems to me like another attempt to jam up Terrence Crawford again, out of nothing more than spite, than malice.
No easy way for me to say this.
When I think about Al Haymon, how he is regarded and revered by some
as the patron saint for the black fighter in America, the patron saint for the black man in boxing. He is his rod.
He is his rod and his staff and his shield.
I mean, they really do talk this guy up like he's the patron saint for the disenfranchised, disillusioned, mistreated, and mispromoted black fighter in America when, near as I can tell, he's screwing over black fighters. He's trying to screw over Terrence Crawford. He has been for years, and it looks to me like he's still trying.
Maybe it's because Terrence Crawford was with Top Rank for a number of years.
Okay, then. Why did he instruct Errol Spence Jr. to screw Derek James out of his money? Derek has been with Errol from the start of his pro career, and Errol has been with Al for a number of years now.
From the beginning of the PBC.
So why would he do that to one of his own? Why would Al instruct Errol to cheap out on what he pays Derek James?
Why?
If he's supposed to be staying on code, if he's supposed to be fighting for the cause, some kind of a cause, why would he do that? Why would he tell Deontay Wilder to reject $100 million from DAZN years ago so he could put him in the ring with Tyson Fury?
Why?
Wilder later admitted that there was more money on the table for him fighting Anthony Joshua than what he stood to make fighting Tyson Fury, but under Al Haymon's instruction. He took the Fury fight instead of the Joshua fight.
Why would Al Haymon do that if he's staying on code? Who was he looking out for? Because he couldn't have been looking out for Deontay Wilder. Deontay stood to make more money with Anthony.
Al Haymon instructed him to reject that money and pursue another Tyson Fury fight. Tyson Fury fights, which ultimately led to Deontay Wilder getting his ass kicked, losing his WBC title. He hasn't been the same since. And that was all under the guidance, the instruction of the trusted advisor.
He did the same thing to Rolly.
Years later, we just saw it. He just did the exact same thing to Rolly Romero. Rolly Romero, who was recently in talks to fight Ryan Garcia, and he rejects the Ryan Garcia fight, walks away from it to stay on the PBC side of things instead, just to lose to Isaac Cruz?
For less money.
Walk away from a main event slot with Ryan, more money with Ryan, just to get beat anyway on the undercard by Isaac. And who instructed him to do that? Al Haymon instructed him to do that.
So what's your point?
That where some would elevate Al Haymon to the status of a deity for what they believe he does for the black fighter and the black man in boxing. The reality of it is, the only color that Al Haymon cares about is green.
Well, how's that? You're saying that he had those guys turn down more money for less money.
Yeah, less money for them, not necessarily less money for him. At that time, he didn't want his PBC fighters, his PBC All-Stars, going to some other side of the street, being content for someone else. Even if it came at the expense of lots of money for them, he would prefer they stay on his side of the street
And stay content for him.
to satisfy what were his broadcast partners at their expense.
The expense of the fighters.
But isn't he now letting his fighters, his PBC fighters, go to other sides of the street and fight on other platforms?
Yeah, now he is.
Now?
Because he ain't got no fucking money and he ain't got no fucking fight dates. Letting those guys go somewhere else, that's the least he can do.
So here's the skinny.
What?
You can't make Al Haymon out to be some kind of a civil rights leader or the patron saint for the black fighter in boxing when he screws over black fighters all the time.
His fighters is somebody else's.
He screws over black fighters all the time. The reason he can do it, and people fall for it, is because he looks like them. It's through familiarity and the guise of solidarity.
It's the same the world over.
There are people like this of every ethnicity, of every race, creed, and denomination, pretending to be looking out for the people that have something in common with them. All the while, they're just looking out for themselves. When you tell a Rolly Romero not to go to Golden Boy, not to go to DAZN, even though they have more money for him than you do, well, it's not Rolly you're looking out for, it's yourself. Because you need content for your new broadcast partner. So you screw over Rolly, cost him an opportunity, looking out for yourself and your brand.
That's what it is.
It's what it's always been. And those who protect Al Haymon and talk him up do so behind the guise of polarizing subjects that are often too taboo for table talk in the hopes that they can thereby galvanize their subscribers, misrepresenting the situation as somehow being race-related,
When it's not.
control the narrative, and render anyone who criticizes Al Haymon, his PBC, and their business practices as being racist for doing so.
It's all bullshit.
It's a sophisticated guilt trip is what it is, but I ain't got no baggage. I ain't got no luggage. So that bullshit doesn't work on me. I see Al Haymon for what he is, and I always have.
Another false prophet for profit. To anyone who's gullible enough to think he's really looking out for them just because they have one or two things in common.
To grow up. It's tell-dem age at this point, playing on familiar tropes in order to elicit an emotional response.
Instead of a logical one.
This is a business, and this is boxing. And in boxing, the only color that matters is green. Do you understand that, Mr. Freedom Fighter? Elsewhere, in the world of boxing, Bernard Hopkins claims anyone but Tank or Spence for Ryan Garcia would only serve to stay busy.
Tank won't fight him unless he can handicap him.
Hopkins appeared on the Spit Bucket podcast to discuss the prospect of a possible Garcia versus Spence contest, claiming a fight between the pair was plausible given the personal differences. That is promotable, said Hopkins. That is something people want to see and not just the storyline. Errol Spence to me is a threat to anybody and is definitely a good soap opera leading up to the action of fighting. It gives something to the fight that makes it personal. Hopkins named both Spence and Gervonta Davis as top priorities for Garcia and even said anything else is just something to stay busy with.
Ryan did say that he would like to fight Errol Spence because Spence screwed over his current trainer, Derek James, and we know everything they're going through right now.
Ryan says he wants to fight him. Bernard Hopkins says he would like to promote it. In truth, if you did make that fight, there is enough there, enough backstory, and enough marquee value between them that it would be commercially viable, though they must look at Errol Spence Jr. as low-hanging fruit at this point. Very low-hanging fruit that they would go as far as calling him out.
They're not just going to throw caution to the wind with Ryan. If they're calling out Errol at this point, it's because they feel Errol is quite beatable.
Hopkins named both Spence and Gervonta Davis as top priorities for Garcia and even said anything else is just something to stay busy. Personally, I say fight the best in the division for the most money. I understand that you are King Ryan. They make money by fighting you, said Hopkins. If Spence is the one, which I believe it is, if it ain't Tank, Gervonta Davis,
And it likely won't be. Tank's not going to move up for Ryan. He won't fight him if he's fully hydrated and healthy.
if Spence is the one, which I believe it is, if it ain't Tank, Gervonta Davis, and it ain't Spence or whoever else after that, those two, Spence and Davis, I see at the top of the food chain as Garcia's ideal next opponents. Anything else to do is to stay busy.
The Tank fight isn't realistic in spite of all the money that they could make because Tank won't move up in weight for Ryan Garcia. He won't fight him unless he can handicap him. And the Spence fight isn't realistic because he's embroiled in this lawsuit with his old trainer, Derek James.
I don't know that Bernard has any real expectation of getting either Gervonta Davis or Errol Spence Jr. in the ring, but Spence especially because he's between trainers right now. He's in the midst of a lawsuit. It's been close to a year since he last fought and suffered that devastating beating at the hands of Terrence Crawford. No, I think that when Bernard pitches this idea, it's little more than just promotion.
He's just saying things so that the journos have something to write articles about.
No real expectation of making a fight, though, as stated, if they were to make this fight, hypothetically, yes, it's commercially viable between what remains of Spence's fan base and Ryan Garcia's newfound buzz and all the momentum that he has amassed. If you made it, you could sell it.
Yeah.
But I find myself questioning as to whether or not Errol Spence Jr. will ever return, and if he does, will it be this year? He was there ringside for the Tim Tszyu versus Sebastian Fundora fight, what was the kickoff fight for the PBC's deal with Amazon. And after the fight, and after Sebastian won, we all know that gave off the distinct impression that behind the scenes, conversations have already happened to put Spence in the ring with Sebastian. Though all the while, in the background, this thing with Derek James was going on. We're just now hearing about it.
Spence would make more money fighting Ryan than he would fighting Sebastian.
Ryan Garcia's buzz has grown exponentially since his big upset win over Devin Haney. So if you had to evaluate which fight gets Spence more money, it would be the Garcia fight over the Fundora fight.
Which fight is more winnable?
Well, that really would be the Garcia fight more than the Fundora fight.
Outside looking in.
Weighing those two options, though once again, I don't know that Spence is going to come back. I mean, come back at all. And if he does, I don't know that it's going to be this year. I wouldn't be surprised if this year comes and goes without Errol Spence Jr. setting foot in a boxing ring.
He might not.